A poor girl named Jung-hee, on her first day at work, had just set down a fruit platter and was about to leave when she suddenly saw 10,000 on the floor. She looked up to see a customer gesturing toward her. Jung-hee thought they were giving her a tip, but just as she picked it up, she realized they were trying to make a fool of her, mocking her with insults. Despite feeling humiliated, Jung-hee politely excused herself, but as she was about to open the door, someone suddenly came in. She lost her balance and fell directly into the arms of a wealthy young man named Ji-woo. He quickly pushed her away, and Suju hurriedly left, not knowing that this encounter was just the beginning of their connection. Jung-hee often came to the church for a free meal, saving money from her job to study abroad. Coincidentally, the wealthy young man also came here. His mother, a pastor, was almost infuriated by his lazy attitude. He casually found a seat, and Jung-hee, who was nearby, glanced over and seemed to recognize him. Confidently, he gave her a flirtatious wink, but Jung-hee remained unimpressed. Just as she was about to leave, the free eggs at the entrance caught her attention. Jung-hee wanted to take a few more, but the sign said each person could only take one, so she reluctantly put the extras back. As she sat down to finish her meal, she overheard him being scolded by his mother. After eating, Jung-hee couldn't resist sneaking an egg into her bag, but just then, Ji-woo suddenly appeared, startling her. Embarrassed, Jung-hee didn't know how to explain, and to her surprise, he even encouraged her to take a few more, which made her feel awkward. As she was leaving, he reminded her that eating too many eggs could lead to bad breath. Jung-hee gave him a sharp look, frustrated by this annoying guy. Another day, Jung-hee was carrying a basket of corn to sell on a busy street, and not far away, the wealthy young man was enjoying afternoon tea. She recognized him immediately as he noticed her working hard. He thought she was truly everywhere. But soon, just as he was about to nap, Jung-hee came over, saying she had an urgent matter and asked if he could watch her corn for a moment. Without waiting for an answer, she rushed off. Not long after she left, customers came to buy corn, and he, reluctantly, had to help with the sales. Shopkeeper confronted him, but he explained that it wasn't his stall. The shopkeeper, however, dumped the corn onto the ground, and he just stood there. When Jung-hee returned, seeing all the corn scattered on the ground, and anxiously asked what had happened, the young man, unwilling to argue with her, casually pulled out 50,000. With the money in hand, Jung-hee instantly calmed down. On a luxury cruise, Ji-woo was doing another part-time job, and a friend reminded her to take care of herself. But to save enough for her study abroad, she was pushing herself hard, working under the hot sun and starting to feel dizzy. Just then, Ji-woo noticed her and waved for her to come over to pour him a beer. However, from lack of sleep, Jung-hee's vision blurred as she staggered toward him, accidentally placing her hand on his thigh. Sensing trouble, he kicked Jung-hee away, and her arm scraped on the ground, jolting her awake. At that moment, the young man saw his ex-girlfriend approaching and tried to leave quickly, but Jung-hee kept holding on to him. As his ex came closer, almost spotting him, he pulled Jung-hee close and held her to hide. Jung-hee finally broke free, only to be pulled back by him into a corner. She demanded compensation, but as his ex returned again, he quickly picked her up and pretended to kiss her to avoid being seen. Jung-hee struggled to get free. Just recently, the young man had broken up with his girlfriend. She had said that her father was a notorious gangster and that if he didn't comply, there'd be no way out. The woman tearfully tried to hold on to him, but was ruthlessly pushed away. The young man saying he had to return home to inherit billions, which enraged her. She searched through her bag, pulled out a gun, and fired without hesitation. The bullet flew straight toward him, but luckily he reacted quickly. Realizing the situation was real, he screamed and ran, but the woman wasn't letting him off. She chased him down, firing another shot. Desperate, he stumbled down the stairs, while she took the elevator to catch up. He finally made it to the lobby, just about to escape, but in his panic, he failed to notice a glass wall and slammed into it, passing out. As he lay there dazed, the woman aimed the gun at him. Just as his life seemed to be over, her bodyguards rushed in just in time to intervene. The young man narrowly escaped danger and quickly flew back to his country, but he soon found himself cornered. The woman was determined to teach him a lesson. He lied, claiming he loved Jung-hee, who looked completely surprised, unable to understand a word of the foreign language they were speaking. The woman questioned why he would choose a girl who looked like a beggar. Unwilling to let it go, the woman challenged Jung-hee to a drinking contest, saying that if she lost, she would withdraw. The young man promised that if Jung-hee won, she'd get 2 million. Jung-hee, thinking that 2 million would be enough for her study abroad fund, accepted without hesitation, not even considering the consequences. The woman appeared confident, while Jung-hee matched her with fierce determination. Little did the woman know, Jung-hee was no pushover. Her father had been famously strong. Clearly, she had inherited his resilience. She drank as if it were water, one cup after another, until the woman couldn't keep up and eventually admitted defeat. They went to the counter, but when Ji-woo took out the money, he realized Jung-hee was gone. Looking down, he saw her lying on the ground, fast asleep. Unable to find out where she lived, he had no choice but to take her to a hotel. Using Jung-hee's phone, he contacted her friend Ji-hyuk. Concerned about her drunken state, Ji-hyuk asked what had happened, but the young man was more curious about his relationship with Jung-hee. Ji-hyuk didn't respond, but as he carried Jung-hee out, the young man handed over the promised 2 million, leading Ji-hyuk to misunderstand the situation. The next morning, Jung-hee was surprised when she learned that the money hadn't been received, as she needed it that day to pay her tuition. However, Ji-hyuk's friend, knowing Jung-hee's struggles, kindly waived the fee. Jung-hee was deeply grateful and hugged her tightly. That day, she quit her kitchen job, eagerly awaiting her study abroad notice. But days passed without any news. She returned to inquire, only to find out that Ji-hyuk's friend had resigned and that the institute abroad didn't even exist. Meanwhile, Ji-hyuk's friend had already boarded a plane with her boyfriend for a vacation. Heartbroken, Jung-hee went to her house, only to find it empty. Jung-hee remembered the 2 million that the young man owed her, so she asked for his address to collect it. Meanwhile, he had arrived at a treasure warehouse his wealthy grandfather had left him, hoping to find valuable items. However, he discovered it was filled with old books. Jung-hee quickly found the place using the address and called out a few times, but the young man, wearing headphones, didn't notice anyone had entered. As Jung-hee tried to approach, she tripped over some clutter and fell right into his arms. Surprised, she quickly pushed herself away, causing him to stumble into a bookshelf. Though his nose bled slightly, the real issue was that his limited edition watch shattered. Now, not only would Jung-hee not get her debt, but she'd have to pay for the damage. She suggested deducting the cost from the 2 million, but he was furious. There were only 500 of these watches worldwide, and the repair would cost millions. Even after deducting 2 million, she'd still owe him 8 million. Realizing her mistake, Jung-hee tried to keep calm and insisted on seeing the damage. Jung-hee argued that since he'd been standing there, he also shared some responsibility. After a bit of argument, he finally agreed to settle for 5 million, but she said she don't have the remaining money. The young man was shocked by this, but Jung-hee saying she had no money left, only her life to offer. He took out his phone and warned her not to try escaping. She'd better answer any calls he made or he'd report her. Frustrated, Jung-hee turned to leave, lamenting that all the money she'd saved for studying abroad had been swindled, and now she was stuck with an additional 5 million debt. She didn't even have bus fare and was kicked off the bus. Reflecting on all she'd been through recently, she began to cry. At the same time, Ji-woo faced his own troubles. His bank cards were all frozen. It turned out that after his wealthy grandfather's passing, his 2 aunts inherited billions in assets and shares, while his father received nothing. Since childhood, he had shown no care or respect for his grandfather, so he inherited nothing but that warehouse full of old books. Now broke, he had to ask his brother for spending money. As soon as he stepped out, he ran into Jung-hee and Ji-hyuk eating together, and he quickly dragged his brother along to follow them. Ji-hyuk initially wanted to call the waiter, but seeing that Ji-woo's brother, who was also his boss, was there, he greeted him politely. Ji-woo suggested they all sit together, and Ji-woo mentioned that her brother would pay the bill today. To avoid further complications, Jung-hee lied and said Ji-hyuk was her boyfriend, which instantly changed Ji-woo's expression. When Jung-hee went to the restroom, Ji-woo was already waiting outside and asked her about her relationship with Ji-hyuk, threatening to reveal that they had kissed before. Jung-hee was unfazed, explaining that it wasn't real and that she only pretended to be his girlfriend to avoid awkwardness since his brother was treating them. Relieved, Ji-woo contacted Jung-hee the next day, asking her to repay her debt quickly. However, Jung-hee was now relying on Ji-hyuk to make ends meet and had no money to repay. Ji-woo confessed that his real reason for reaching out wasn't just the repair fee. Ji-woo invited Jung-hee over to his place, making her do chores to offset her debt. Just then, Ye-ji, who had always liked Ji-woo, showed up. When she saw Jung-hee, she mistook her for a cleaning lady, not realizing who she was. Before leaving, Ji-woo instructed Jung-hee to clean thoroughly. After Ji-woo left, Ye-ji eagerly hugged him. Witnessing this, Jung-hee couldn't help but feel that they looked like a perfect match. Later, Ji-woo and Ye-ji discussed how competitive young people were these days, joking about even cleaning jobs being in high demand. Suddenly, Ye-ji received a call from her company, which annoyed her. She complained about being the chairman's daughter, yet still having to please others. Hearing this, Jung-hee felt even more self-conscious. After sending Ye-ji off, Ji-woo returned to find the place spotless. Jung-hee was lying in a chair resting when Ji-woo quietly approached. His sudden move caught her off guard, and their gaze met, causing Jung-hee to blush. Embarrassed, she quickly got up to avoid him. Ji-woo complimented her for cleaning the first floor well, but said she couldn't leave until she tidied up the second floor too. At this, Jung-hee's patience ran thin. Ji-woo then told Jung-hee to wait and specially prepared a cocktail for her. After just one sip, she felt transported to a dreamy seaside city. She was so amazed that she asked him what it was. Ji-woo teased that not only could she clean, but she was also quite cute, then asked if she'd be interested in being his. This comment made Jung-hee overthink, lost in her imagination until he tapped her, snapping her back to reality. He explained that he was opening a bar and wanted her help there. Since she couldn't pay back the $5 million, he suggested she work off the debt. This annoyed Jung-hee, and she angrily walked out, asking if she was that easy to bully. Needing startup funds for the bar, Ji-woo asked his brother for help. Their mother was surprised to hear he was finally doing something productive. His brother agreed but wanted to see if Ji-woo was capable enough. The next day, Ji-woo was taken to a bartending event, where Ji-hyuk, who worked there, informed Jung-hee about free food. Excited, Jung-hee came right away. Ji-woo spotted her in the crowd but noticed she was with that same woman again, making Jung-hee feel a bit jealous. While exploring, Ji-woo was captivated by a towering stack of glasses. Just then, someone accidentally tripped over a cable, causing a large chandelier to shake above her. Ji-woo noticed and yelled for Jung-hee to move out of the way, but she thought he was joking again. Within moments, the chandelier was falling, and Ji-woo ran to shield her, pulling her into his arms as they narrowly escaped. Seeing blood on Ji-woo's forehead, Jung-hee fainted from the shock. They were quickly taken to the hospital, where Jung-hee, exhausted, slept soundly. Unable to bear it, Ji-woo went over and gently wake her up. She stands up, feeling deeply guilty for causing his injury. At the bartending event, Ji-woo performed impressively. His brother agreed to invest, but only offered $50 million and insisted on a monthly repayment schedule. Ji-woo was instantly displeased. His brother told him he didn't have to accept if he wasn't happy, but Ji-woo quickly stopped him. With his arm still injured, he enlisted Jung-hee to help carry supplies. But even with this assistance, they were still short on funds. So Ji-woo set his sights on his father's resources, even secretly selling his beloved car, which caused his father to break down in tears. Soon, Ji-woo's bar was finally ready. When it came time to paint the signage, Ji-woo began to put on a show. Tired, Jung-hee continued working, only to have Ji-woo stare at her, looking for ways to tease her. He claimed she had paint on her face, and when she believed him, he added another spot for balance, saying it looked better that way. Just then, Jung-hee's phone rang. It was Ji-hyuk calling. Ji-woo noticed how warmly she greeted him, and jealous, Ji-woo quietly followed her, eavesdropping. But Jung-hee quickly noticed him. Jung-hee thinking about how she'd been staying at Ji-hyuk's place and hadn't found a permanent job yet, which was inconvenient for both of them. So she considered working at the bar but felt shy about asking. She tested the waters, asking if Ji-woo's previous offer still stood. Ji-woo feigned ignorance, asking what he'd said before. Blushing, she awkwardly repeated his offer to work off her debt. Then, regaining her composure, Jung-hee pointed out that she was actually a chef and had always dreamed of studying arts in France, so she wasn't planning to stay in such a small place forever. Ji-woo felt a bit hurt. In no time, Jung-hee showcased her cooking skills, which Ji-woo tasted and admitted were pretty good. Later, the two went outside to hang the sign, but Ji-woo kept making things difficult, annoying Jung-hee to the point that she angrily jumped down. Only then did she think to ask about her salary, but Ji-woo informed her that there wouldn't be any pay for the first 2 months, as it would be used to cover her debt. Jung-hee's furious reaction was all recorded, and Ji-woo teased her. It was then that Jung-hee realized how ridiculous she looked on video, and she chased Ji-woo in circles, demanding he delete it. Later that evening, Jung-hee came to discuss her salary and asked if there would be any extra pay for night shifts, but Ji-woo surprised her by saying the bar wouldn't be open at night. Jung-hee was shocked, a bar that only operates during the day. However, Ji-woo didn't explain further. The truth was, he always felt anxious at night, and a doctor had advised him to get treatment, but he hadn't taken it seriously. The next day, Jung-hee came in early, noticing that Ji-woo had dyed his hair back to its original color, which gave her a sudden fluttering feeling, but her curiosity remained. Why did the bar, run by a young heir, only operate during the day? She started suspecting he was up to no good at night. Seeing her curiosity, Ji-woo beckoned her closer and then sent her off to put up hiring notices. Suddenly, Jung-hee remembered a friend she'd recently met, who was even more down on his luck than she was. She introduced him to Ji-woo, saying he could sing well and was also pretty handsome. Ji-woo wasn't particularly impressed, but Jung-hee pushed, and he reluctantly agreed to give the guy a chance. As they celebrated their new addition, another young woman came in, auditioning as a bartender. Her skillful techniques left Jung-hee in surprise, and after tasting her drinks, Ji-woo decided to hire her. Finally, their bar was officially launched, but with a unique rule: only 1 drink per customer, as Ji-woo's vision was not to get people drunk, but to give them a just right moment of happiness. Jung-hee suggested they could make more money selling multiple drinks, but Jung-hee dismissed the idea. Ji-woo joked about being the best boss they could find, and everyone cheered to celebrate. Jung-hee encouraged her friend to take a shot, but Ji-woo instantly became angry, shouting that he'd had enough to drink. The next day, Ji-woo donned a black suit and went to a memorial for an old friend, a tragic memory that still haunted him. When they were young, he and Yeji were good friends. Yeji had liked Ji-woo since childhood, but his older brother died in an accident, which became a burden for Ji-woo. As he stepped outside, he ran into Yeji's mother, who believed her son's death was somehow related to Ji-woo. She warned him to stay away from Yeji. After 6 p.m., Jung-hee quietly returned to the bar, wanting to prepare for the opening the next day. Unexpectedly, Yeji came in with a cake knife, questioning why Jung-hee was there. Jung-hee explained she was just working at the bar, but Yeji dismissed her and left without a word. As Jung-hee was taking out the trash, Ji-woo returned, obviously in a bad mood, and immediately told Jung-hee to leave. Seeing Ji-woo drinking in silence, Jung-hee handed him the cake knife, and without knowing the situation, she began singing Happy Birthday. Ji-woo became furious, throwing the knife to the ground, leaving Jung-hee at a loss. Ji-woo then asked if Jung-hee would do anything for money and whether she wanted to go to his room. Heartbroken, Jung-hee turned to leave, but suddenly it started to rain. Remembering she had forgotten her bag, she retraced her steps and found a broken umbrella. On her way back, she heard a noise and discovered an abandoned kitten. Jung-hee took the kitten back to the bar, and after settling it in, she noticed that Ji-woo had fallen asleep. Jung-hee cautiously approached, intending to retrieve her bag, but Ji-woo suddenly grabbed her. They were silent for a moment, and Ji-woo didn't apologize but mentioned that his wounds hurt. Jung-hee reprimanded him for looking down on others and insisted that no one deserves to be bullied. After expressing her thoughts, Jung-hee turned to leave, but Ji-woo hurriedly stopped her and sincerely said he was sorry. Leaning against Jung-hee, Ji-woo revealed his innocent side, causing Jung-hee to lose her temper. Ji-woo brought some clothes, but Jung-hee ignored him. Feeling rejected, Ji-woo turned to leave. The next day, Jung-hee brought the kitten out, but Ji-woo insisted she put it back. Jung-hee said she would forgive Ji-woo for what happened yesterday if she could keep the kitten. However, Ji-woo stubbornly pretended to forget. Moments later, Ji-woo came back, and they began discussing the menu together. The two who were hiding nearby seemed to sense a hint of romance in the air. The bar welcomed a lot of customers on its opening day, and with Ji-woo's charm and good looks, female customers were quickly drawn to him. Jung-hee, secretly watching from the kitchen, felt a bit of jealousy, but was soon spotted by a colleague who guessed Jung-hee must be feeling hurt. Ji-woo's parents also came to support him. Upon seeing Jung-hee, his mother recognized her immediately, having met her before in church. She really liked Jung-hee and held her hand, criticizing her son for his many shortcomings and asking Jung-hee to take care of him. Meanwhile, Yeji informed Ji-hyuk about Jung-hee working at the bar. Upon hearing this, Ji-hyuk felt disheartened all day. His co-workers noticed he seemed troubled and speculated that his girlfriend might be interested in someone else, which hit Ji-hyuk hard. On Jung-hee's end, she returned the clothes to Ji-woo, who took them and deliberately inhaled them. Jung-hee mentioned they had been washed. Before leaving, Ji-woo affectionately patted Jung-hee's head, making Jung-hee's heart race. As he was about to leave, Jung-hee suddenly remembered that Ji-woo had mentioned no one was allowed on the second floor, leading her to overthink the situation, causing her to feel anxious. Driven by curiosity, she quietly went upstairs, where the absence of people made her feel bold enough to relax on the bed. Suddenly, the door opened, and Jung-hee quickly reacted, rolling off the bed. Ji-woo opened the fridge only to find it empty, so he went downstairs to get water. Seizing the opportunity, Soo-jo hurriedly got up and ran outside, but was startled by footsteps at the door. After quickly running downstairs, Jung-hee was sweating from the close call. The next day, Yeji came by to talk about Jung-hee working there. After closing, everyone left, except for Jung-hee. Ji-woo mentioned he was hungry and asked Jung-hee to make him something to eat. Despite his behavior, Jung-hee complied, knowing she still owed Ji-woo money. After they had eaten, Ji-woo started to question her relentlessly. Under pressure, Jung-hee finally admitted that Ji-woo's brother was Ji-hyuk's superior, and she hadn't said anything to avoid causing concern. Jung-hee decided she was leaving, but Ji-woo insisted on giving her a ride home to save on bus fare. Jung-hee didn't refuse, and during the ride, she stared out the window, uninterested in anything Ji-woo said. After they got out of the car, Ji-woo asked if she wasn't going to invite him in for coffee. Jung-hee hesitated and then said no, questioning what she would do that for. Meanwhile, Ji-hyuk observed this interaction. Upon returning, he noticed Jung-hee's unhappy expression and questioned why she hadn't told him about her job. Seeing that Jung-hee was genuinely upset, Ji-hyuk wanted to express his feelings. Just as he was about to confess, they heard Jung-hee's brother calling from outside. Jung-hee panicked, remembering how she had stolen 30 million from his mother to study abroad. Now, his brother had come to confront her, causing Jung-hee to hurriedly hide in the bathroom while his brother entered, needing to use the restroom after a long day of travel. Ji-hyuk hurriedly blocked Sang-hee, claiming his girlfriend was in the shower. He pushed Jung-hee towards a nearby convenience store, warning that her brother would be back soon. Ji-hyuk urged her to run first, assuring her he would help tidy up later. Jung-hee rushed out, only to realize she had nowhere to go. Homeless, she sneaked into the bar's storage room, planning to spend the night there. The next day, Jung-hee woke up early, but was startled when Ji-woo suddenly came downstairs. She quickly hid again, knowing she would be in trouble if discovered. Peeking through the door, she saw Ji-woo's toned body and couldn't help but swallow hard, marveling at how handsome he was. Just as she was daydreaming, Ji-woo seemed to notice him. Jung-hee quickly shut the door. After a moment of silence, she cautiously come out. However, Ji-woo had already set his sights on her. "Why are you here so early?" Ji-woo asked. Jung-hee nervously replied that she had come early to clean the storage room, then hurried inside to start tidying up. Meanwhile, Ji-hyuk was outside distributing flyers, but no one paid attention to him. Yeji couldn't stand it any longer and abruptly stripped off her shirt, exposing her legs. The flyers in her hand were blown away by the wind, and even while sitting, people approached her. In no time, she finished handing them out. While Jung-hee was taking care of the kittens, a poet gifted her 2 tickets to a musical, hinting that she could invite Ji-woo to go with her, hoping she would make a good impression. Since Jung-hee's brother had been lingering, Ji-hyuk brought over her luggage and asked if she had developed feelings for Ji-woo. Jung-hee didn't answer directly, and Ji-hyuk pretended to leave without caring. To prevent Ye-ji and Ji-woo from dating, their mother intentionally tricked her into a blind date. Ye-ji angrily left without hesitation, prompting her mother to hit her out of frustration. As a result, Ye-ji ended up drunk. The server contacted Ji-woo through her phone, and Ye-ji pleaded with him to date her, but Ji-woo only regarded her as a younger sister. Unwilling to give up, she came back the next day, offering to buy Ye-ji food. While she was trying to persuade him, she accidentally spilled food on her clothes. Ji-woo went to get a towel, and in the meantime, Ye-ji warned Jung-hee to stay away from Ji-woo, stating they were dating. Heartbroken, she stuffed the musical tickets into her book. Ji-woo witnessed this scene. After Jung-hee left, he found the 2 tickets. The next day, Ye-ji called to invite him out, but to avoid disappointing Jung-hee, Ji-woo refused. However, Ye-ji also wanted to watch the musical, arguing that it would be a waste not to go, so she devised a plan to get Ji-hyuk involved. Meanwhile, Jung-hee discovered the tickets were missing. Just then, Ji-woo suddenly appeared. When she saw the tickets in Ji-woo's hand, she wanted to take them back, but Ji-woo mentioned that he also liked to watch musicals. Ji-hyuk had arrived early, his eyes lighting up at the sight of Ye-ji. At that moment, Jung-hee and Ji-woo also arrived, leading to an incredibly awkward atmosphere. Ye-ji accused Ji-woo of deliberately getting close to her and flirting with Jung-hee. Jung-hee remained silent, heartbroken as she took the bus to wherever it would lead. She reflected on everything she had experienced with Ji-woo recently and realized that a romantic relationship between them was impossible. Still, she chose to wait at the bar for Ji-woo to return. However, Ji-woo rejected Jung-hee's attempt to talk about their feelings, leaving her in tears. They both had feelings for each other, but Jung-hee felt unworthy of Ji-woo, and she resolved to give up any feelings about him. As they continued working together, their deliberate avoidance of each other became obvious to the poet. While Jung-hee was taking out the trash, she came across a beggar and, showing her kindness, gave him some food. The old man assured her he would return. Ji-woo witnessed this and thought about how Jung-hee was just being kind-hearted. As soon as he entered, Ji-woo approached Jung-hee with intentional teasing, prompting her to glare at him before leaving. After work, they invited Jung-hee to watch a show, but when she arrived, she saw that Ji-woo was also there. This left Jung-hee with a face full of disapproval. During the performance, someone accidentally bumped into her. Ji-woo quickly pulled her into an embrace, but Jung-hee thought she was being taken advantage of. She retaliated with a swift kick, resulting in a scream that sounded like a pig being slaughtered. Realizing she had been too rough, they stepped outside, and during their casual conversation, Jung-hee shared her dream of going to France to study arts and eventually owning her own restaurant. Ji-woo acknowledged that many things in life are terrible and advised Jung-hee not to dwell on it. However, he kept his own past experiences to himself. That evening, Ji-woo went to the balcony to look for his cat and accidentally spotted Jung-hee sneaking into the bar. He hid and observed as Jung-hee stealthily entered the warehouse. He opened the door and found Jung-hee sleeping on the couch. The next morning, Jung-hee pretended to have just arrived at work. Ji-woo didn't expose her and instead offered her a blanket, casually mentioning that it was of poor quality and should be thrown away. As Jung-hee touched the soft blanket, she felt secretly pleased. At work, Song informed Ji-woo that his birthday was coming up. His family planned to gift him 2 elephants, one of which would be flown in, which interested Ji-woo's curiosity. She jokingly wondered if Song's family owned a zoo. That day, Ji-hyuk invited Jung-hee to meet, unaware that their older brother was secretly following them. When they met, Jung-hee asked Ji-hyuk why he wanted to see her. Ji-hyuk simply wanted to catch up, claiming he missed the chance to talk to Jung-hee last time. Just as Ji-hyuk attempted to kiss Jung-hee, a familiar voice interrupted them. Seeing her brother made Jung-hee panic, and she quickly got up and ran away. At first, Jung-hee plans to save money for going abroad, secretly taking the funds meant for her brother's wedding. His brother was incredibly disappointed by this. However, Jung-hee had been scammed and was left with nothing. When his brother learned of the situation, he cried out of frustration. Jung-hee was mentally strained and woke from nightmares. Suddenly hearing strange noises outside her door, she cautiously opened it but found nothing. She felt a cold chill behind her, turned around, and fainted as she saw her brother's ghost come to seek revenge. In her panic, their mother suddenly appeared, and Jung-hee pleaded with her to save her, but when she turned, she was terrified again. With a scream, Jung-hee woke from this nightmare. She looked exhausted, and Jung-hee's co-worker, concerned, brought her some medicine, but Jung-hee remained cold. Meanwhile, Jung-hee's brother realized that Ji-hyuk liked his sister since they had grown up together as childhood friends. He decided to help Ji-hyuk. That evening, he called Jung-hee out, and when she arrived, he pressed a remote control, revealing the area with lights. Jung-hee walked over slowly, and on the screen, her photos were displayed. At that moment, Ji-hyuk appeared, presenting her with a pendant and affectionately putting it on her neck. After a heartfelt confession, he kissed Jung-hee, leaving her confused. She only saw him as her closest friend. That evening, Ji-woo sought out Jung-hee again. He admitted that he liked Jung-hee, but intended to keep his distance, believing it was best not to get too close or engage in a romantic relationship. Jung-hee was heartbroken, but said she wouldn't force anything. Ji-woo was trapped by his past. As Jung-hee turned to leave, Ji-woo stopped her, and Jung-hee was shocked to finally hear his secret. He revealed that he had been very close to Yeji's brother, who shared the same birthday. After their birthday celebration, Yeji's brother had run into the mountains, and despite Ji-woo's attempts to stop him, Yeji's brother fell off a cliff. Ji-woo rescued him, but since there was no signal up there, he left to find help, only to return and find Yeji's brother missing. The discovery of Yeji's brother's body later shattered him. He blamed himself, feeling that if he hadn't left to seek help, Yeji's brother might still be alive. Jung-hee understood the pain Ji-woo felt and comforted him. In a moment of emotion, Jung-hee kissed him, and they embraced, feeling closer than ever. After they calmed down, Ji-woo explained that he had always seen Yeji as a sister. His guilt over his brother's death prevented him from saying no to her. At the same time, Yeji's mother arrived, opposing any relationship between them. However, Yeji declared that she would only marry Ji-woo, revealing a long-hidden secret. Her brother had run into the mountains after seeing their mother with uncle next door while their father was bedridden. This revelation left their mother stunned. But just as they started eating, Yeji suddenly barged in, saying she was drunk and they should talk when she was sober. However, Ji-woo firmly stated that she was more clear-headed than ever. Heartbroken, Yeji turned to leave, only to realize that Jung-hee also lived there. Furious, she smashed a mirror, then called Ji-hyuk. When he learned that they were living together, Ji-hyuk rushed over, trying to take Jung-hee away. Ji-woo stepped in to stop them, and the two men got into a fight. Unexpectedly, a punch landed on Jung-hee's face, and she fell to the ground in shock. The two men quickly regretted their actions but were still at odds with each other. To avoid further conflict, Jung-hee hurriedly pulled Ji-hyuk away, but Ji-woo blocked her, pulling Jung-hee into his arms and declaring to Ji-hyuk that they were together. Seeing that Jung-hee didn't deny it, Ji-hyuk was heartbroken. Yeji, who could not accept the idea of them being together, crashing into a pillar in frustration. Upon hearing the news, Ji-woo rushed to the scene. When Ji-woo arrived at the hospital, Yeji's mother slapped him, blaming him for everything that had happened. When Yeji regained consciousness, Ji-woo asked her why she had reacted so strongly. Yeji tearfully explained that she had lost both her father and brother, and she couldn't bear to lose Ji-woo too, and stated that if Ji-woo were to leave her, she wouldn't know how to go on living. This situation left Ji-woo feeling lost, unsure of what to do next. Meanwhile, Song and Ji-yu were about to leave the store when suddenly, a woman accompanied by two bodyguards approached them. Alarmed, Song grabbed Ji-yu and ran. Ji-yu quickly pulled out her phone to call the police, but the woman reassured them that there was no need to worry and insisted that the young master must go with them. Confused, Ji-yu wondered who this young master was, and ultimately, Song was taken away. Ji-yu returned to the store to inform Jung-hee, but neither knew what to do. They could only wait and see what would happen. When Ji-woo returned, he went straight upstairs, feeling weak and resorting to medication to calm his nerves. Jung-hee had prepared a bedside lamp for Ji-woo, hoping he could learn to rely on it to sleep peacefully. Ji-woo revealed that Yeji was in an accident because of him, and that he was now planning to get engaged to Yeji to prevent any reckless behavior. Jung-hee hugged Ji-woo, unwilling to accept that they should part ways. However, Ji-woo gently pulled her hands away and said, "I'm sorry." Heartbroken, Jung-hee broke down in tears, packing her things to leave. With nowhere to go, Jung-hee went to Shiyuan's house to stay for a while. Though she was deeply saddened, she understood Ji-woo's situation. While Ji-woo stayed with Yeji, the latter happily planned their wedding. The next day, Ji-woo received a call from Song, and they soon found themselves at a luxurious villa. Shortly after sitting down, an elegantly dressed female lady appeared, instructing them to kneel as a sign of respect. Jung-hee initially thought they were participating in some kind of ceremony, so she knelt without hesitation. To their surprise, they discovered that Song was a real prince, leaving them completely stunned. Song hurriedly urged them to stand up, and dinner was served. Suddenly, Song revealed he had a gift for Ji-woo. When Ji-woo opened it, she found it filled with all her favorite plush lambs. Taking the opportunity, Song confessed his feelings to Ji-woo. Later that evening, he offered to drive them home in a luxury car. This unexpected romance caught Ji-woo off guard. Jung-hee encouraged her to consider Song. However, Ji-woo hesitated and did not want to respond to his feelings. The next day, Jung-heel's mother unexpectedly arrived. She immediately insisted on taking Jung-hee back home. However, for the man she loved, Jung-hee did not want to leave. Her mother reminded her of the past, recounting how Jung-hee's father had died frozen in the snow due to his obsession with alcohol. Ultimately, Jung-hee was taken back home. When Ji-hyuk finished work and saw them kneeling, both Jung-hee and her brother. That night, Jung-hee quietly got up and went outside. After much hesitation, she decided to call Ji-woo. She shared that her mother intended to take her away and expressed her hope that Ji-woo would try to keep her from leaving. It was only with Ji-woo's support that she felt she could find the courage to continue. Jung-hee did not want to leave. However, Ji-woo rejected her plea. After hanging up, Jung-hee felt heartbroken. Upon returning home, Jung-hee's mother urged her to go on blind dates. One such date was with a man who boasted about his 32-square-meter apartment, claiming that at Jung-hee's age, she was practically a second-hand product. Infuriated, Jung-hee stood up to leave, but the man thought she was playing hard to get. Enraged, Jung-hee rejected him. Meanwhile, Ji-woo's mother visited Yeji, explaining that ever since the accident years ago, Ji-woo had been undergoing psychological treatment. He had not slept soundly a single day and was often awakened by nightmares. Ji-woo's mother believed that Jung-hee's presence had helped Ji-woo improve. His mother encouraged Yeji to reconsider her feelings for Ji-woo. On the way back, Yeji felt deeply saddened and sought out Ji-woo, only to find him drinking to ease his pain. She wanted his heart, not to see him living in such sorrow. In her drunken state, she called Ji-hyuk, and while walking, she stumbled and fell. When she returned home, her emotions became overwhelming. Ji-hyuk, unsure of what to do, stepped in to comfort her. Yeji's sobbing suddenly stopped, and she realized she had fallen into Ji-hyuk's embrace. Ji-hyuk quickly changed the subject, suggesting that he help Yeji tend to her wounds. As he carefully applied the medicine, Yeji felt a sense of care she had never experienced before. Unable to help herself, she leaned in and kissed Ji-hyuk, a bold move that left them both feeling awkward. The next day, Jung-hee's brother arrived and informed Ji-woo about the blind dates her mother had arranged. He entered Jung-hee's old room. Grabbing a playful cat, he seemed to find a reason to connect with Jung-hee. After some hesitation, he finally called her. During the call, Jung-hee expressed her plans to move away, and he casually asked about the blind dates. Ji-woo pretended to be supportive, saying he wanted to give her a large sum of money as a gift. This news saddened Jung-hee. She was disheartened to receive such insincere comments from him. Unbeknownst to them, Jung-hee's mother overheard the conversation. Seeing Jung-hee's daily despair, she took out $1 million and handed it to her daughter, urging her to rent a place and strive for her dreams and love. Later that day, Jung-hee found a new apartment, and everyone came to celebrate. The beggar had changed his behavior entirely. It turned out he was a hidden tycoon with restaurants in both Paris and New York. Following the tragic loss of his daughter, He had fallen into a life of wandering until Jung-hee shared her first meal with him. In her, he saw the spirit of his daughter, and he invited her to train at his restaurant. Meanwhile, Yeji went on a date with Jiwoo. Jiwoo remained distracted, thinking about Jung-hee, while she pretended to be happy, taking photos of Jiwoo as keepsakes. But on their way back, it suddenly started to rain. As they sheltered under an eave, Jiwoo went off to bring something. Yeji understood that Jiwoo had always cared for her like a sister, but it wasn't true love. She didn't want Jiwoo to suffer because of her. She chose to step back. Just like Song loved Jiwoo, but respected her choices. After their farewell, Song embarked on his journey back home, and Yeji reconciled with her mother. She finally understood her mother's past pain. Her father had been bedridden, and her mother had to support both the family and the company alone. Her mother, too, needed someone to rely on. Hearing her daughter's words brought comfort to her mother. She approached Jiwoo and admitted that she knew Yeji brother's death wasn't his fault. For the pain Jiwoo had endured all these years, Yeji's mother felt deep sorrow and wished for him to let go of that past grief. Jiwoo was rendered speechless by these revelations. That day, when Jiwoo was cleaning, she seemed to have something on her mind. Jiwoo urged her not to look at him that way. Jiwoo revealed his breakup with Yeji. Meanwhile, Jiwoo quickly called Jung-hee, informing her that Jiwoo and Yeji had broken up, hoping they could rekindle their relationship. However, Jung-hee had already decided to study abroad, and she determined to better herself. The next day, as Jung-hee went to apply for her visa, she unexpectedly encountered her former friend who had deceived her and taken all her money. Upon seeing Jung-hee, the friend fled in panic. The chase left both of them exhausted, but the friend pleaded for Jung-hee's forgiveness. But as she calmed down, the friend revealed that her boyfriend had tricked her into going abroad and then disappeared with all her money. Hearing this, Jung-hee decided not to pursue the matter further. The next morning, Jiwoo informed Jiwoo that Jung-hee was leaving the country that day. Jiwoo rushed out, but by the time he arrived, he missed her again. Jung-hee sensed that Jiwoo was looking for her. The uncle mentioned that there was still time to catch her if she hurried down. Despite everything, Jung-hee chose to embark on her academic journey. As a result, the bar business continued to flourish. Jung-hee's brother thrived in the fashion industry, and Jiwoo also became quite close to him, visiting just to see the photos of Jung-hee on her brother's phone. Whenever he spotted other men around her, Jiwoo couldn't help but feel anxious. Ji-hyuk, due to his outstanding performance at work, was successfully promoted. Yeji often sought Ji-hyuk's help whenever she encountered difficulties on the job. She admired his serious attitude and long eyelashes. Suddenly finding him quite handsome, she encouraged him to perform well, hinting that one day the company might be hers. She jokingly suggested that they could become secret office lovers, but Ji-hyuk insisted on prioritizing his career. Unexpectedly, Jiwoo ended up with Jiwoo's brother, turning the situation amusing as one of Jiwoo's employees was about to become his sister-in-law. One day, Jiwoo visited Jung-hee's brother's home as usual, but received no response after calling out for a while. When he stepped into the room, he was completely taken aback to see Jung-hee there in front of him, and just as he was about to take a closer look, Jung-hee suddenly woke up. At that moment, her brother returned home, and seeing them together, mistakenly thought something had happened. Both quickly shook their heads in denial. Jung-hee's brother told her, "This crazy guy comes over every day to look at your photos and videos." At this moment, Jiwoo still felt as if he were dreaming. To confirm reality, he pinched Jung-hee's cheek hard, and upon hearing her cry in pain, he finally accepted that it was all real. From then on, wherever Jung-hee went, Jiwoo was right there with her. While Jiwoo waited for her to finish each day, his charming presence drew the attention of many waitresses. When Jung-hee noticed them still pursuing Jiwoo, she quickly took his hand, asserting her claim. In response, Jiwoo wrapped her in his arms, signaling his affection publicly. Upon returning to the bar, Jiwoo once again prepared a mojito for Jung-hee. Curious, she asked why he always made her this drink. Jiwoo explained that in Spanish, mojito means little spell, symbolizing the magical bond they shared. They finally found happiness together. Thanks for watching. See you next time.